Good day, everyone. It's a rainy December 30th, 2021, and I'm going to have or start another project. This used to be a can of fruit cocktail. I covered it with paper and tissue paper. I use tissue paper also because I want those lines to imitate the texture of a wood or a tree stump. This is going to look like a tree stump with a fairy house. Okay, now for the part showing how to apply the paper and the tissue paper onto the empty can, I suggest that you watch my other videos, especially the one with the grapevine. It says recycled can grapevine. So you look at those and you check them out. And the first video shows how I cover this. So in the succeeding projects that I'll be making, even in bottle art, I'm not going to show anymore how to cover the container with paper or tissue paper, so that it would save time. You can refer to the other videos. Now for this one, I'm going to put a fairy door. I'm not going to use popsicle sticks. I can use popsicle sticks if I want to. However, I'm going to use now epoxy. I got these cans. It's a pair of epoxy. One is epoxy A, which is softer, and another is epoxy B, which is the hardener. So you mix them together, you knead them like dough, and until they are blended together. And while they're still soft, you form the shapes, and then after a few hours, the epoxy you applied on the can is going to harden according to with the shape that you use. Now, why am I going to use epoxy? As I said, I could use popsicle sticks. However, the popsicle sticks are too narrow, and if I am going to use the tongue depressor, it will be too wide, and because of the curved surface, it might not be what do you call this, firmly attached to the surface. Whereas epoxy, it's going to be like clay. I have seen people use polymer clay, craft clay. You can use them. I'm using epoxy because here in my country, those kinds, the polymer clays, are too expensive for me. So, and they're just small amounts, and they're really costly here in the Philippines, unlike in the US, where they're coming from. They're cheaper there. So I'm going to use epoxy. Now, I'm going to first plan where to put the door. I can draw or go straight to applying it, but here I'm going to do a rough sketch of the door. I'm sketching it, and because the reason why I'm sketching it is because I would like to put like a porthole, like a window here. So I would like to see where I'm going to put that window. So this is just a rough sketch. Okay, here's the sketch I made. Okay, that's how it's going to look like. So let's mix the epoxy. So here I have epoxy. I have calcimine powder. I showed this to you last time. Calcimine powder, we use it so that the epoxy won't stick to our fingers. You can mix the two, or knead, K-N-E-A-D. You can knead the two together with minimal epoxy sticking to your fingers. So if there would be some, they're easy to remove. Whereas if you don't use epoxy, it's really impossible. It's really impossible to work on using epoxy without the calcimine powder. Some people call it calcimine, but if you Google it, it's calcimine. So I have here a cardboard. This used to be the cover of a pie I bought. I put some calcimine here, and you know, it's okay to have calcimine in your fingers because you're going to apply calcimine to your fingers anyway. So I also have a stick which I'm going to use. You can use a barbecue stick or a used ball pen or any branch. Okay, this is a branch of a mahogany tree I got, so I can get some of the epoxy, place them here. Now I have some carving tools. My late mom used to be a dentist, so I have her carving tools he uses for, you know, treating her patients. If you don't have carving tools, you can use a toothpick, preferably the round one. I don't have the round one. This is quite the flat, the usual flat. The round one would work better. Okay, so let's first make, in this part of the video, I'm going to make the fairy door. Okay, so I'm going to get epoxy A and epoxy B and mix them together, equal amounts. Too much epoxy A would make your epoxy sticky, too sticky, and it would take quite a longer time for the epoxy to harden. Too much epoxy B would make the hardening faster. So if you are still slow in forming the shapes, you might end up with hardened epoxy, and you know, the epoxy would be wasted. Now look, the epoxy is sticking to my hand, but with the calcimine, by using calcimine, I could easily remove them. Okay, they would fall off like dough. Now let's get epoxy B. So you just start with small amounts, and then later on, if you still need to add more, then you add more. Don't mix too much. So as I said, I'm using epoxy for the door because they would really, you know, form, and also when carving, because the door will look like wood. I like epoxy because once applied, I can use carving tools so that they would simulate the grains, or you know, those lines inside the wood, within the wood. So the lines would make the door look antique. You have, if I suggest you watch the video when I made the recycled can grapevine. There you would see how even making the trees or the grapevines, it's so nice with epoxy. So once it's getting sticky, apply epoxy again to your fingers, and you knead the two together. So epoxy A and epoxy B. Let's put them here. I bought this from Ace Hardware, or you can buy them at your regular hardware store like Ace Hardware, Handyman, or some of the smaller hardware stores in your city or province. I think this one, a pair, would cost more or less 100 pesos. So if you make that in dollars, $2, I'm not sure, but that's how it costs here in the Philippines. Okay, so now I'm going to make the door now. I'm going to get some. Okay, there. Because of that, I'm going to knead it together to prevent those empty spaces in between. Then I'm going to make this shape by rolling it. Okay, you know, it's just like making some bread. Okay, you roll it, and then you put it on the surface, and you start making what looks like a piece of wood. So if to avoid the epoxy from sticking to your fingers, you get some calcimine. So that's how it looks like. Okay, so now I'm making a plank, one plank of wood. You know, to make it smoother after putting or applying, you can do this and it would look smoother. Okay, so here I'm not going to let it reach here. Why? Because I'm going to put something like, you know, like two or maybe one or two steps to before the door. So okay, so that's it. So I'm going to use a popsicle stick if I would like to, you know, make the wood straighter. Okay, okay, so there's one, and then let's go to the second one. Now the reason why I placed the circle is to know the boundaries, so that I would know where to end later, if you know, so that I'm going to make a space for that for that porthole or window. Okay, so let's do that again. There. Then I'm going to apply it in here. Okay, the epoxy has gotten sticky because when I rubbed it between my hands, it got sticky again. So here is the second plank. I'm starting with the second plank. I'm leaving a space in between because that's how planks are, right? There are spaces in between. Okay. 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 So now I'm putting it. Okay, there's a hole. If it's too much, you can just get your cutting tool or a toothpick and remove the excess epoxy. And then use your fingers again to flatten that, to shape it. Now because I joined the two, I'm going to rub the pieces together so that they are going to fuse. Okay. Okay, now if it's too flat, you know, I could just push that to the side. Now, if you lost some of the space in between, you just get your toothpick, apply some calcimine, and then rub it in between so that you can maintain the plank space. Okay, the space between the planks. Now you do that the same procedure with the others. Okay. The nice thing about epoxy is the planks would be irregularly shaped. Unlike when you use popsicle sticks, they would be stiff and, you know, all straight lines. Here you could alter. You might want, you know, one tip tapering and the other one, you know, going getting wider. It depends on you. So I think I need to make more epoxy, mix more epoxy. Okay, so okay, look at that. Okay, I'm placing it here, so leaving the space for the window, and then flattening it, okay, to shape, to give shape or to form the plank. Okay. Okay, so there it is. Okay. So to make sure the planks are separated. So I'm going to use the toothpick to know the places where the planks should be. Okay. So now you see the window. Let's make some more. It's better to get small amounts than to end up having too much, and then they would harden and the epoxy is wasted. I'm making more because after making the planks, I'm going to carve the planks, and then I'm going to form the like boulders on the edges of the wooden planks. There are other shapes that you can make. You know, for the door, by the way, you can Google fairy door and you will see so many different types of fairy doors, so that you can have ideas as to what else you can have some concepts. I saw one with they made like a small pot, a small tissue, a small newspaper rolled up and left on the doorstep. I'm planning, I'm not sure if I could make it. I'm planning to make a pair of boots outside to, you know, pretend that someone's inside and he left or she left her tiny fairy boots outside. So knead them together. You have to mix them very well, because if not, you know, if you don't mix them very well, your epoxy would get soggy. By the way, as I said in the prior video on the grapevines, the video where I made a can with grapevines, you don't let this dry under the sun. The heat, the high temperature would cause the epoxy to melt. Okay, so it's not a good idea to put it out. Okay, so now it's kneaded well. It's mixed very well. Okay, so you can put calcimine also on it, in it. Just like kneading dough. Then let's have the fourth plank. Okay, after the fourth plank, I'm going to carve the, okay, so it's sticky again, so I'm going to make this one here. Okay. So apply with your fingers. You can dab it. Okay. Some wood. Okay. Form the planks. So there you have 4 planks for your door. Now, next is the carving part. You can use a toothpick, as I said. However, I'm going to use some carving tools used by Mom. And I'm going to add those grains, wooden grains, so that when I paint this, the grains would look black, while the wood would be like yellow ochre or something. Okay, so look what I did to that. Okay, so you just add those lines to simulate the lines in the pieces of wood. Okay. So there you have, okay. If you don't like lines, you can use, like deep holes. Okay, so if the tool is sticking to the epoxy, it means you have to apply calcimine. Okay. Now, let's say when applying those grooves or lines, you made them too deep that you cannot see the separation between the planks. So what you do is you work on the separation between the planks and make them deeper than the lines you made on the planks that simulate the wood. Okay. Maybe you have observed that in my past works, I usually work with themes that are related to nature because I love nature. When I was still a young boy, and we had this encyclopedia in the bedroom assigned to me and my youngest brother. The topics I would look up on the encyclopedia are those topics about trees. It's an American encyclopedia, so I would learn about different kinds of trees, conifers, and other types of trees through those videos. Okay. So here I seem to have lost the demarcation line between the planks. So I'm going to make it deeper, carve it deeper, and maybe push one of the plank to one side, okay, to make it clear that they are separated. So you apply, this one here is applying the wood grains. The wood grains. Okay. Okay, so there I have it. Now I'm going to make the border. Okay. For the border, I'm going to pretend that they are small rocks. You can put them individually if you want, or you can use a long piece and carve them. Let's try this idea. I saw one where they did it individually. Okay, let's just make it like one whole piece, because making it individually might take too much time. Okay, so I need this. It's too big. Okay. And then I apply it to the edge. See that? I applied it to the edge, pushed it a bit. So now you have, okay, it's too much, so I can remove the excess. Okay. So I'm going to press it to the can. Okay. And then I will start shaping. Okay, let me put the other side too. I'm making it a bit flatter because, you know, sometimes if it's too bulgy, it's going to sag. And based on experience, it's not good. So now I'm planning to make a broomstick also, by the way. So here I have the edge to the door. Then calcimine again, because it's very sticky now. I'm going to press it onto the can. Now because it's pressed, Now I'm going to shape it to pretend that it's made of separate stone, separate rocks. Okay. So, okay. So how do I do that? You know, simple. You just press them and pretend they are rocks. Okay, let's use toothpick because some of you might just be using toothpicks. Okay. Okay, see that? Now it looks like a rock. You know the shapes of rocks, right? Sometimes, you know, they have these, you add details to the rocks later to make them look like rocks. You know, some of them don't have a smooth surface. Some of them might have some, you know, like presses here and there, you know, some areas that are pressed. Okay. You can use the bottom, the flat bottom of your container, of your tool, and make some indentions. Maybe you would like to make some rocks upward and together. I'm also planning to add some vines here. So, you know. So now look at that. Okay, so you do that to the rest of the epoxy there to make it look like rocks. Make them irregular, you know, not everything is rectangle, you know, make them trapezoid or irregularly shaped. Make some pentagon. Okay, so apply calcimine again because it's getting sticky. Make the shapes irregular. Everything was quiet. An angel passed by. Suddenly there was silence. Okay, so now you have that. Okay, so I guess you have an idea of what I'm going to do here. Now I'm going to put something to the window to make it like, you know, like a border. Right, so I'm going to make something round, like a round piece of branch. So you just get a small amount. Okay. Make it quite long. And then make it like the border of your window. If you want, you can make it irregularly shaped. Because usually in the woods, in the forest, not everything is perfectly shaped, right? There are curves, you know, lots of things that are not regular. Okay. Now let's do the doorknob, or maybe a knocker. You know that knocker? It's something round, and then they use it to knock, knock, knock. um, I'm going to put something here like the hinges. Okay, I'm going to put like a hinge here. I saw on in one video I saw some hinges that look, you know, like medieval hinges, okay? And some were a bit more mythic, like, you know, like mystical, something, you know, like whimsical. When you say whimsical, you know, like, you know, it doesn't follow a certain pattern. So I'm going to make the hinges a bit like whimsical. Okay, so to make it whimsical, okay, so I'm going to get a small part here, press it, okay. Okay, like that. And then maybe something like a branch, a curly branch. Okay. Something like a vine. So that's my first door hinge. Now I'm going to carve it to give it the look of a piece of wood from the forest. You have seen this when I made the grapevine. Okay? I added, you know, pressed a little to make it like a vine. Okay, there. Okay, so there's your hinge, your first hinge. Shape it while it's still soft. Okay. I'm going to add a sharp detail here to make it look like it's, you know, like a forked tongue. Okay, so there's my first hinge, like a branch. Now I'm going to add the second hinge. Now the epoxy is starting to harden now, so I have to work faster. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so let's make another hinge. Okay, let's make it shorter. It's too long. Okay. To those of you who are watching from abroad, because I'm making this video for the students of a former colleague. She's now a public school teacher. She handles fourth, fifth, and sixth graders here in the Philippines. So here in the Philippines, some people have beliefs in, you know, spiritual, you know, mythical spirits. They vary from one country to the other. So I guess in your country, you have your own stories too. I remember teaching once mythology of Europe. Somewhere in Europe, they believe that some trolls are hiding in the cliffs. And in some countries, they don't touch big boulders because they say that those are houses of the elves. So I have heard of a story wherein a school or a hospital was supposed to be made, but they didn't push through with it because there was a big rock, and they say it's really something sacred and should not be touched. Okay, so now I have my hinges. Okay, now let's make a doorknob. I'm not going to make the knocker the round thing. Why? Because this is already round. I would like to just make a typical doorknob. Okay, just something long, like a piece of wood. Let's see. I'm thinking of the shape for this, for the doorknob. Okay, I'm just going to make it a sphere so that later on, when I color it, it would really be pronounced. Okay, I'm going to press a part of the door so I can embed it there. Okay, so now there is a doorknob. Okay, there's your doorknob. So how do you like it so far? So before it hardens, I'm going to add details to the rocks. You know, some rocks have lines too. But let's see. Okay. Okay, now I have some epoxy. I'm going to form the windows. Okay, I'm going to form the windows now so that, you know, this one won't be wasted. So to form the windows, I'm just going to make a long piece and form a circle. Or maybe what I'll do is I'll make it like a vine. Okay, let me form it first. Oops. I have so many concepts. I don't know which one to use. Okay, so let's put the window here. Okay. It depends on you. The shape depends on you. Okay. If you want it circle, oblong, square, irregular, it depends on you. So I made it round. Now I press it. Okay, I'll apply some epoxy to my fingers. I'll press it to the can. So there it is. I have my window, and then pressing that would give it an irregular shape. Because I'm planning to attach something here later. Okay, so I'm giving this an irregular shape. So there it is. There's one window. Let's put something like, you know, like the one inside to make it look like some window pane. If you look at my YouTube channel, you would see in the past I have made some fairy houses. I have made one using a can of mayonnaise, and the top was like a mushroom. Okay. Okay, so okay, so there's one, and then the curl I left it here. I'm going to add a leaf later so that the epoxy won't be wasted. Okay, so I'll make the other one here. Okay, and just cut it. There it is. I'll cut it. So to make the leaves, I believe I've shown this to you. Okay, you can make some a round shape. Okay, and then you press it. Okay, now look, I'm pressing the round shape here. Let me go closer. Okay, I'm pressing the round shape, and then make it like that, longer here. Let it taper, and then make it flat, and then use your your toothpick. Put the carbs of the leaves there. So now you have a leaf. See that? I'm forming the leaf. Okay. You can add smaller parts, to add smaller details. You know, the more detailed your work is, the more amazing it looks. Okay. So there it is. So maybe I'll have another leaf somewhere. Okay. Okay, I'm going to make some more epoxy, and I'm going to make like a branch or a tree coming here, emerging here and forming the window. Okay. So let me just put this as the base or the trunk of that tree. Okay, I'm going to shape it. You know, tree trunks, you know the shape of tree trunks, right? Okay. Just, you can make it like, yeah, let's do this. There. I'll make it longer. I'll make it longer, and then instead of a tree, I'll make it into a vine. Okay. So like a vine here going there. Okay. There's a vine. I'll make the edge tapered more. Okay, so I'll make some vines. Okay, so there. I'm going to add some more epoxy and make the vines, you know, like they are intertwined. Okay. Just press, because if you don't press, you know, the epoxy might fall off. Okay, so you shape the vine. I like shaping vines because when you paint them and give them the antique look, they really look good. Really. Okay. So you just to make the vines, you just add some diagonal shapes. Depends on you, on what direction. Just add diagonal shapes to make those vines. Okay. So I have a vine here. So I'm going to pause the video. When I return, you would already see the two windows and the vines, and then I'll show you how to make the part here. Okay, so see you later.